In my experience, the moment your life falls apart usually looks completely ordinary from the outside. Mine looked like a kitchen counter. A half-empty coffee mug, her laptop open to a travel itinerary, and a yellow sticky note that said, "Picked up you dry cleaning, love you." That was a Tuesday morning in March. By Friday, I had hired a private investigator. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name isn't important. What matters is that I was 41 years old, a structural engineer for a mid-size firm in Columbus, Ohio, and I had been married to my wife, I'll call her Dana, for 11 years. We had a house with a porch we never used, a dog named Hector who was getting old, and what I genuinely believed was a solid marriage. Not a fireworks marriage. Not the kind you see in movies, but solid, dependable. I thought that was enough. I thought we both did. Dana was a university professor, architecture history. She had this way of walking into a room like she'd already decided she was the most interesting person in it, and the maddening thing was that she was usually right. Smart, polished, the kind of woman who made strangers feel lucky to have met her after 5 minutes. I was proud of her. I told people that. I meant it. She traveled for conferences 3, maybe 4 times a year. Academic stuff, panels, symposiums, the kind of events that come with lanyards and mediocre hotel catering. I never thought twice about it. Why would I? The first crack was so small I almost missed it. She came back from a conference in Denver in late February. I picked her up from the airport, and something was off. Not wrong exactly, just off. Like when a song you know by heart plays one note slightly flat. She was chattier than usual, laughing too easily. She talked about the conference the whole drive home. But when I asked who she'd had dinner with on the last night, she paused. Just a half second. Then said, "Oh, just a few colleagues from the department." I didn't push it. I filed it away in that part of the brain where you put things you don't want to look at directly. 2 weeks later, I was paying bills online and I noticed a charge on our joint credit card. A hotel in Denver. But it wasn't the conference hotel she'd told me she was staying at. This one was a boutique place downtown. Checked in 2 days before the conference started. 2 nights. I sat in front of that screen for probably 10 minutes without moving. Then I closed the laptop, walked to the kitchen, and made a sandwich. Because sometimes the only thing your brain will allow you to do is make a sandwich. I didn't say anything to Dana. Not yet. I needed to know more before I knew what to know. That probably sounds strange. But if you've ever suspected the person you built your entire adult life with of something devastating, you understand. You don't want to accuse. You want to be wrong. You're desperately trying to construct a version of events where you're wrong. So I started paying attention in a different way. I noticed she'd gotten a second email account. I found it by accident. She'd logged in on our shared home computer and forgotten to sign out. The account was her middle name and a random number. She'd never mentioned it. I didn't open it. I just noted the name and closed the browser. I noticed she was keeping her phone face down now. Always. And she changed her lock screen passcode at some point without mentioning it. These are small things. Individually, they're nothing. Together, they start to build a shape. The shape got clearer in March. She told me she had a 2-day faculty retreat in Dayton. Mandatory, she said. Very boring, she said. She'd be back Thursday evening. I said fine. Drive safe. Text me when you get there. She texted at 6:47 p.m. Made it. Exhausted. Going to sleep early. Love you. I called the retreat venue that Thursday morning. I told them I was trying to reach my wife about a family matter and asked if they could transfer me to the event coordinator for the architecture faculty retreat. The woman on the phone was very helpful. She checked. There was no architecture faculty retreat booked at that venue. Not that week. Not that month. I hung up and stared at the wall of my office for a very long time. Then I called Marcus Webb. Marcus is a licensed private investigator out of Columbus. I'd used his firm twice before for work-related due diligence on contractors. Never for anything like this. He answered on the second ring. I told him I needed eyes on a situation and that I needed someone who was discreet and thorough, in that order. He told me he understood completely. He didn't ask me anything I wasn't ready to answer. By the time Dana came home Thursday night, Marcus had already sent me 3 photographs. I was in the living room when she walked in, Hector doing his arthritic little shuffle to greet her at the door. She looked refreshed. Happy even. She kissed me on the cheek and said the retreat had been productive. I said that was great. I asked if she wanted dinner. She said she'd eaten on the way home. I went to bed that night and lay next to her in the dark and thought, I am sharing a bed with a stranger. The photographs Marcus sent showed Dana at a hotel in Cincinnati, not Dayton, not the retreat venue, arriving with a man I didn't recognize. Late afternoon check-in, side by side through the lobby, his hand at the small of her back. Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus built a much fuller picture. The man's name was Garrett. He was 44, divorced, and he taught at the same university as Dana, different department. Urban planning. They'd apparently known each other for over 2 years. Marcus tracked their communication pattern through publicly available metadata, and what he could observe, and what he found, was not a casual affair. This had a rhythm to it. Hotels in different cities, specific windows when I was traveling for work or she'd manufactured a reason to be away. It was managed, organized, like a second calendar running parallel to our actual life. That hit me differently than the cheating itself. The cheating was a wound. The organization of it was something colder. It meant she'd looked at our life and decided it needed a shadow version. She hadn't fallen into anything. She had built something, and she had maintained it, and she had come home to me in between and said love you, and meant it for neither of us. Marcus found 2 more things that I wasn't expecting. The first was a group. Not just Garrett. Through the second email account, which Marcus obtained access to through legal means I won't detail here, we found correspondence with a loose network of people, mostly academics and professionals in their late 30s and 40s, who organized what they euphemistically called weekend intensives, rotating locations, curated guest lists. The emails were careful, but not careful enough once you knew what you were reading. Dana had attended at least 4 of these in the past 18 months. I had driven her to the airport for 2 of them myself. The second thing Marcus found was a conversation between Dana and a woman named Claire, a close friend of hers I'd had dinner with a dozen times, in which Dana discussed, in plain language, the possibility of divorcing me within the next 1.5 years. She mentioned the house. She mentioned our joint accounts. She mentioned making sure she was in a strong position before anything became official. She was planning to leave me, and she was planning to leave me in a way that benefited her as much as possible. I read that email thread on a Wednesday evening in April, sitting in my car in the parking lot of a Home Depot because I'd needed an excuse to leave the house. I sat there for probably 45 minutes. Hector had a vet appointment that Saturday and I'd been planning to mention it at dinner. I kept thinking about that. The vet appointment. The absolute mundane reality of a life that was already, from Dana's perspective, a draft document pending deletion. I called my attorney that Thursday morning. His name is Robert, and he has been my family's attorney for 9 years. And when I told him I needed to talk about divorce and asset protection, he simply said, "Come in at 2." What followed was 6 weeks of very quiet, very deliberate preparation. I want to be clear about something. I did not want revenge in the cinematic sense. I didn't want a scene. What I wanted was to not be destroyed by someone who had spent 1.5 years getting a head start on destroying me. There's a difference. One is about making someone suffer. The other is about making sure you survive. Robert and I worked through the financials carefully. Dana and I had a joint account, but I also had a personal investment account that predated our marriage, and Robert made sure the documentation on that was airtight. I quietly moved liquid assets in ways that were entirely legal and entirely within my rights. I documented everything Marcus had given me, not to use vindictively, but to have. In divorce proceedings, information is leverage, and I was done being the person in the room who knew the least. I also made one phone call I still think about. Garrett's ex-wife, I'll call her Linda, had 2 kids with him. They'd been divorced for 3 years. I found her through Marcus's background work. I didn't call her to be cruel. I called her because I thought she had a right to know that the man paying her child support had been participating in the same activities that had dismantled my marriage, and that if she had any outstanding custody negotiations, that information might be relevant. I told her what I knew. I gave her Marcus's contact information. What she did with it was her decision. She sent me a text 2 days later that just said, "Thank you." I told Dana I wanted a divorce on a Saturday morning in late May. She was at the kitchen table with her coffee and the newspaper. She still read an actual newspaper. which I had always found charming. And I sat down across from her and I said, I know about Garrett. I know about the others. I know about the emails with Claire. And I've already spoken to Robert. The color left her face in a way I've never seen happen to a person before. Not embarrassment, not even guilt. Just the specific pallor of someone realizing that the timeline they've been managing has already expired. She started to say something. I think it was going to be a denial, or maybe an explanation, the opening note of some negotiation, and I said, You don't need to. I have everything. Robert has copies of everything. You'll hear from his office on Monday. Then I got up, put my coffee mug in the sink, and took Hector for a walk. He was slow that morning, sniffed everything. Stopped a neighbor's mailbox for a full minute and a half for reasons only he understood. I let him. We walked 6 blocks, and I didn't think about Dana or Garrett or the emails or any of it. I just walked my old dog in the May sunshine and felt, for the first time in months, like I was breathing actual air. The divorce took 8 months. Dana contested several things. The investment account, the house equity split, and lost on the investment account because Robert had built a wall around it. She did better on the house than I'd hoped, but not as well as she'd planned. The Claire situation imploded on its own when word got around their mutual friend group about what had come out in Discovery. I hadn't spread anything. These things have a way of traveling. Garrett, I heard through the university grapevine, was placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into what the faculty ethics board delicately called conduct unbecoming. I don't know the full details. I didn't pursue it. It happened without me. Linda, I'm told, had a very successful custody modification hearing. I sold the house 8 months after the divorce finalized. Bought a smaller place on the east side of Columbus, just me and Hector, with a porch I actually use. It faces west. The sunsets in October are ridiculous, the kind that look almost fake, too orange, too cinematic, like someone oversaturated a photograph. I sit out there some evenings and think about the sticky note. Picked up your dry cleaning. Love you. I threw it away eventually. I don't remember when. There's something nobody tells you about surviving the kind of betrayal I went through. Everyone assumes the hard part is the betrayal itself. The discovery, the confrontation, the legal battle. And those things are hard. I won't pretend they aren't, but the harder thing is quieter than all of that. It's the recalibration. Learning to trust your own perception again after spending months in a reality that turned out to be partially fiction. Learning that solid and real are not the same word, that you can be attentive and present and faithful and still not see what someone close to you has decided you shouldn't see. I don't think I'm better for what happened. I don't believe the things people say about how trials make you stronger or how you needed this to grow. Maybe some people need that framing. I don't. What I know is that I'm still here. Hector is still here, slower every month, white around the muzzle now. The porch faces west. The sunsets are absurd and I watch them anyway. That's enough. For right now, that's genuinely enough. I've thought a lot about the word solid since all of this happened. I used it to describe my marriage for years. Solid foundation. Solid partnership. Like I was describing a piece of furniture instead of a relationship. And maybe that was the first honest mistake, mistaking stability for depth, assuming that because nothing was visibly wrong, everything was genuinely right. Dana didn't stumble into what she did. That's the part that stayed with me longest. She built it. She maintained a second calendar, a second email, a second version of her life running clean and parallel to the one we shared. That takes intelligence applied in a particular direction, not toward building something, but toward concealing it. And I think that distinction matters. Intellect without integrity doesn't make you clever. It makes you efficient at self-destruction. You just don't see the wall coming until you've already hit it at full speed. I'm not angry at her anymore. That surprised me when I first noticed it. The anger just kind of burned itself out somewhere around month 4 of the divorce proceedings, like a fire that ran out of material. What replaced it wasn't forgiveness exactly, and it wasn't indifference either. It was something closer to clarity. I could finally see the full shape of what had happened, without the distortion of either love or fury, and what I saw was simply a person who made choices, and then lived with the consequences of those choices. Same as the rest of us, what I'm more interested in, and this is the thing I actually talk about when people ask me how I got through it, is the 6 weeks between finding out and telling her I knew. Those 6 weeks changed something in me, not because I was plotting, not because I was planning some elaborate revenge, but because for the first time in years I was operating entirely from my own center. No performance. No managing her feelings or her perception of me, just me, making deliberate decisions about my own life, one careful step at a time. That felt like something I hadn't had in a long time, maybe ever. Garrett faced consequences he created. Linda got information she deserved. Dana lost the head start she'd spent 18 months building. None of that came from cruelty. It came from me simply refusing to stay uninformed about my own life. There's a version of this story where I confront Dana in February, when I first noticed something was off, and it turns into a screaming match and she lies and I half believe her because I want to. I've thought about that version. I'm glad it didn't happen. What Hector understood, and I mean this without irony, is that you show up for your walk. You sniff the mailbox. You take the time that's given to you. He didn't know what was falling apart inside that house. He just knew it was morning, and the sidewalk was there, and his legs still worked. There's something instructive in that, if you're willing to look at a 13-year-old beagle as a source of wisdom. I sold the house. I bought the smaller place. The porch faces west. I use it. That's the whole lesson, if there is one. You survive by continuing to show up for the life that's actually yours, not the one someone else scripted, not the one you were too afraid to examine. You pay attention, you act when action is required, and then you let the sunsets be ridiculous, and you watch them anyway, because you're still here and that counts for something.